laughter. Long live Palestine, long live Gaza. Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. Wish I could take your tears and replace them with laughter. Long live Palestine.
While we listen to tunes made by ignorant fools, Israel blocked the UN from delivering food. They bring in the troops and you won't even glimpse at the news. They make money off the products that we're quick to consume. And it's not simply a question of differing views. Forget emotions, this is facts, what I spit is the truth. Makes no difference if you're a Christian or if you're a Jew. They're just people living in different conditions to you. They still die when you bomb their schools, mosques and hospitals. It's not because of rockets, please God, can you stop this all? I'm not related to the strangers on the TV, but I relate, cause those strangers could have been me. Words could never ever explain the raw tragedy. It's not a war, they're just murdering more rapidly, and we're automatically supporting pure savagery. Imagine how you feel if this was your family.
Free my people, long live Palestine. We will never let you go.
Sing it with me now.
Free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine.
Palestine remains in my heart forever. We stand for peace, times of war, we shan't surrender. Remember, it didn't start in this dark December. Every coin is a bullet if you're Marks and Spencer. And when you're sipping Coca-Cola, that's another pistol in the holster of them soulless soldiers. You say you know about the Zionist lobby, but you put money in their pocket when you're buying their coffee. Talking about revolution sitting in Starbucks. The fact is, that's the type of thinking I can't trust, let alone even start to respect. Before you talk, learn the meaning of that scarf on your neck. Forget Nestle, Obama promised Israel 30 billion over the next decade. They're trigger happy and they're crazy. Think about that when you're putting Huggies nappies on your baby.
Free my people, long live Palestine. We will never let you go.
Sing it with me now.
Free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine.
It's not just a war over stolen land. Why do you think little boys are throwing stones at tanks? And we'll never really know how many people are dead. They drop bombs on innocent girls while they sleep in their bed. Don't get offended by facts, just try and listen. Nothing is more anti-Semitic than Zionism. So please don't bring bad vibes when you speak to me. There's plenty of rabbis that agree with me. It's your choice what you do with this message. Don't get it confused, I view this from a human perspective. How many more resolutions have to be violated? How many more children have to be annihilated? Israel is a terror state, they're terrorists that terrorize. I testify my television, televise and telling lies. This is not a war, it is systematic genocide. But whatever they try, Palestine will never die.
Free my people, long live Palestine. We will never let you go.
Sing it with me now.
Free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine.
Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. Wish I could take your tears and replace them with laughter. Long live Palestine, long live Gaza. Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. Wish I could take your tears and replace them with laughter. Long live Palestine, long live Gaza.
Fidel Castro was a great man, and everyone in the world recognizes that. We have said of Fidel Castro, and it's true, President Sékou Touré says that at any given moment, the best traditions of any people may be represented by all of them, a majority of them, a minority of them, or one of them. And if Fidel Castro is the only human being that represents humanity at its best, humanity will never be diminished one iota. Fidel Castro is a man of great stature and great comprehension. A little island like Cuba. He is himself leaped beyond this island of Cuba. He is known everywhere throughout the world, and he's respected everywhere throughout the world, except by capitalist pigs. Everywhere. America has no right to talk to Cuba. Cuba can teach America so many things. America says that it's one of the richest countries in the world and even demeans Cuba because it's one of the poorest. Yet the conditions of health of a child in Cuba is better than the conditions of health of any child in America. From the child, that child is born until it dies, it will have a doctor in its community that will monitor every movement it makes, free of charge. Because Fidel Castro understands that the most important thing in a society is the quantity and quality of the people and their rising level of consciousness that they have, first of all, a responsibility to other Cubans before they have a responsibility to themselves. America is the exact opposite. Doctors to Africa than America and all of Western Europe together have sent. We're not even talking about freedom fighters. When I first went to Africa in the 1960s, I was shocked. Among all the liberation movements, PAIGC in Guinea-Bissau, Frelimo, MPLA, among all of them, I found Cuban combatants there, teaching them, even sometimes fighting and dying with them. Fidel Castro, we have to respect him. We are Pan-Africanists, and Fidel Castro is a Pan-Africanist of the highest order. When Angola was bleeding and the racist pigs in South Africa invaded Angola, Fidel Castro sent the sons and daughters of Africa, sent those Cubans there whose bloodstream has Africa tied to it, to go and defend Africa. To go and defend Africa's dignity. Fidel Castro. That's why the African community here, we instinctively love him. When Fidel Castro came to America at the United Nations, he came to live at the Theresa Hotel in Harlem. No other president has ever done that. That's the honor he paid to us. And he paid us that honor because we instinctively supported him. We always instinctively support justice. And we know that Fidel Castro is undergoing a just struggle. A struggle for independence. A struggle to be not under the hegemony of American imperialism like all the other puppets in the Caribbean. When America says jump, they say how high. Fidel Castro is concerned with one thing, making sure that the national resources of his country serve the priority of the well-being of his people. Go to these other countries. They sell whatever they have. As a matter of fact, their leaders are sorry slavery is over. Tourism is properly controlled by the Cuban Communist Party. Properly controlled. I mean, they're making experiments with it, but they themselves are in the position of controlling and has within a limited aspect because at this point it's only experiment. Of course, U.S. capitalism is hoping that through this will happen, but it's just a fight always. And you go into a ring, you fight, you're convinced you will win, the enemy is convinced they will win. We will see. But I think the attack here, the political attack, is what I want to speak of. Under this political attack, it appears that because the people in Cuba are poor and they have nothing to eat, that they'll be disgruntled. Vietnam defeated America. Defeated America. And I was in North Vietnam. I had one of the greatest honors of my life. I had lunch with Ho Chi Minh in North Vietnam when American planes were bombing North Vietnam. One of the greatest honors of my life. And the Vietnamese who fought America, they fought America, and every Vietnamese soldier had not one bowl of rice a day. That was their ration. And they whooped America. What does not having food have to do with a fight when you're down? Matter of fact, the poorer you are, the more determined you are in the struggle. So if America keeps thinking that because now the Cubans will only have one bowl of rice, the Vietnamese defeated them on one bowl of rice. The Cubans defeat them on half a bowl.
Greetings, everybody. Greetings. You heard first. You were listening to the hip hop artist Low Key rapping Free Palestine. And then second, you were watching an interview with Kwame Ture. I believe it's from the PBS show Eyes on the Prize, but he was talking about Fidel Castro and Cuba. And man, I appreciate every single word that Kwame Ture ever spoke about Cuba because in these days, these 2021 days of people all of a sudden talking about nuance when imperialism was attacking, Kwame Ture was like always clear. It wasn't about nuance, wasn't about shades of gray. It was very black and white. Cuba's a revolutionary nation that it must be defended, point blank, period. U.S. is an imperialist empire that must be defeated, point blank, period. There is nothing to be confused about, but in the 21st century, we're experiencing mass confusion when it comes to the necessity of solidarity with Cuba and other nations that are being attacked by U.S. imperialism. And so I always like returning to Kwame Ture, returning to the African revolutionaries that came before, so I can get some clarity. Y'all, because this nuanced stuff makes me want to fight. Makes me want to fight. But anyway, my name is Onya Samu. This is Weekly Pan-African News presented to you by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, specifically the New Mexico chapter. of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. The All African People's Revolutionary Party is a revolutionary, pan-African, socialist, mass political party based in Africa, founded in Africa over 50 years ago by Kwame Nkrumah, with the political objective of Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa. Because we believe when Africa is free, Africans everywhere will be free, and that is our goal. We're trying to be free, y'all. We're trying to free our land. We're trying to free our people. So, like I said, this is Weekly Pan-African News. I have a new webcam, if you haven't noticed, and it's because the one on my computer, like if I move, which I do as I tend to talk, it shrouds me in darkness. And so I have this new webcam, but I have to remember to look at it. Otherwise, I'll probably be looking like somewhere like at my actual computer, and that's weird. So make eye contact. But yeah, so we started the show, Weekly Pan-African News, at the beginning of the pandemic. We realized very, very quickly that because our people are underdeveloped and exploited under the capitalist system, they were going to be among the worst affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So understanding that, we were like, we could no longer have in-person events. We have to figure out a way to continue to build with our people while also making sure that we are doing so safely. And so Weekly Pan-African News is one of the many, many, many pivots that we made in order to continue building and learning with our people while also staying safe. So we've been doing the show every single year or every single week for over a year. For over a year, we've been doing Weekly Pan-African News. We've had dozens of guests. We talked about all kinds of things from imperialism to colonialism to capitalism to Pan-Africanism to Cuba. And Haiti. It's amazing. It's been amazing. And we have a really loyal audience who is always in the comments turning up. And we deeply appreciate you. Good morning, Marion. Good morning, Echo to the Moon. I'm pretty sure I know who that is. Hello. Hey, Sally Foo. Hey, Ricky. Hey, Bird. Hey, Sam. Hey, everybody. Hey, KD. Hey, Big Teal. Hey, Leah. This is dope. It's amazing. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So if you have watched the show frequently, you know that we always start with a couple of things. First, we do the intro, which I just did. We talk about who They Therapy is. We talk about who the hell I am. So hello, I'm Oni. I'm with They Therapy. And the other thing that we do at the beginning of every show is that we call in a revolutionary African ancestor. And the reason why we do that is because we understand as revolutionary African people, as members of a revolutionary African organization, that we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. And what I mean by that is that the work that we are doing today would not be in any way possible if not for the contributions and sacrifices and struggles of our ancestors. We are not reinventing the wheel here by struggling for African liberation in 2021. We are actually contributing to a continuum of struggle that began the very first moment the very first European colonizer set foot on the shores of Africa. From the very first moment, the very first invader came to our land with the intent of stealing it from and exploiting us. So that's when the African liberation struggle began. It is hundreds of years old. We're just building upon a struggle that already existed. And so we have to acknowledge who came before us because we could not have done this without them. We wouldn't even be here talking to you without them. So the ancestor that we want to call in today is Miss Ida B. Wells Barnett. Ida B. Wells Barnett. Ida B. Wells probably needs no introduction because she's actually someone who is discussed in history classes in the United States. She was a revolutionary African woman. She was an activist, and she was also a writer and a journalist. That's what she was most famous for. She highlighted the barbaric practice of lynching African people throughout the southern U.S., but it actually happened all over the United States. But she documented each time it happened. She brought international attention to the barbaric practice of lynching of Africans in the United States. She also started a paper that was dedicated to highlighting the organizing for revolutionary African liberation here in the Snakes. And so she was a woman who developed a particular skill, the skill of journalism, the skill of writing, and she used that skill to advance the liberation of our people, to bring attention to what was being done to us around the world. So we absolutely celebrate Ida B. Wells Barnett and her contributions to the African liberation struggle, but also for the model of revolutionary African media, a very, very early form of revolutionary African media that she represented. Certainly outlets like Black Agenda Report, like Hood Communists, like Black Power Media are following in her footsteps, following the path that she laid for us. And so we salute Ida B. Wells for her example, and we hope to carry it forward today. So that's the ancestor. And then the second thing that we do at the beginning of every single show, I guess it's the third thing, because it's the intro. Ancestor. The third thing that we do at the beginning of every single show is we do a land acknowledgement. So I'm speaking to y'all from occupied Tiwa territory. The Tiwa Pueblo is the rightful owners of the land where this city is built. You may know it as Albuquerque. Albuquerque is the name of a Spanish colonizer, some bitch-ass duke, who stole this land, but the land belongs to the Tiwa Nation. They are still here. They are still fighting for their land back. The entire Western Hemisphere was in fact stolen from indigenous nations that are still here, that are fighting for their land back, just like we are fighting for our land back in Africa, just like our Palestinian comrades are fighting for their land back in occupied Palestine, and just like indigenous peoples are fighting for their land back all around the world. When we do a land acknowledgement, it's not just to say it and then keep it moving. We do a land acknowledgement to say that land was taken and land must be returned, point blank, period, from Turtle Island to Palestine to Azania. All the land that was stolen will be returned, y'all. Land back. So we have a very, very special political education topic today that's directly related to the struggle for indigenous people to recover their land. But before we get to that, I want to just briefly give some updates on what's happening with the situation in Cuba. We know that the United States has seized upon legitimate protests that were happening on the island in order to attempt to overthrow the Cuban Revolution. We are living through that right now. The news just came down this morning that the Biden administration is planning to implement additional sanctions on Cuba. The Trump administration already put 283 extra sanctions on Cuba during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden campaigned on the promise that he would walk back the Trump administration's attacks on Cuba, that he would return to the so-called Obama era, opening up of relations with Cuba. And then Biden got in and was like, psych, and immediately continued Trump's attacks. And now this morning, he is applying some of his own. And the same news articles discussing the new sanctions that the Biden administration is planning to apply on Cuba again, while their economy is still reeling from the impact of COVID-19 and the Trump sanctions. The same news reports say that the United States has this cockamamie plan to expand internet access in Cuba using weather balloons. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. First of all, so Cuba has internet access. It is widely accessible. It is all over the island. You have to pay to use it. It is also extremely slow. And the reason why you have to pay to use it, and the reason why it's extremely slow, is because although Cuba is like right next to high-speed copper fiber optic cables that can give them very, very fast internet like we have here, they are not able to tap into those cables. Guess why? Guess why? I bet you already know. The reason why Cuba cannot access the fiber optic cables that go right under the island in some cases is because the U.S. blockade on Cuba prevents telecommunications companies from doing business with Cuba. Cuba literally cannot purchase internet access from these companies because these companies are based in the United States. So the United States blockade cuts Cuba off from high-speed internet access. Venezuela hooked them up, and so now Cuba has access to internet. Internet's very slow, like I said, and they have to pay to use it, like I said. But now they have internet access thanks to Venezuela. But if Venezuela had not done that, Cuba would still be cut off. It's the United States blockade that's blocking them from internet access. And so if the United States was actually interested in expanding internet access in Cuba, instead of launching some stupid weather balloons, they literally could just lift the blockade and the problem would be solved. The United States has this practice when it comes to the relationship with Cuba of creating the problem and then blaming Cuba for the stuff that they did. That's how sanctions work. They did the same thing to Iran. Iran is having protests now too, and some, what's it called? John Morocco calls them like cruise missile leftists. Some cruise missile leftists are celebrating that, but the protests in Iran are happening because the Trump administration heightened sanctions on Iran again during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. It caused so much suffering that the people in Iran are rising up saying we can't live like this. So the United States creates the problem, and then they're like, wow, y'all are messed up. Like, what the hell? And they pretend like they had no idea how it happened. And then people living here, including people who call themselves leftists, will turn around and blame the country. Like, that is what we're living through in this cursed Cuba discourse. This is like the general tenor of discourse around nations being attacked by imperialism in the United States. And it's raggedy as hell, y'all. It's raggedy as hell. We have to follow the example of Kwame Ture and refuse to be nuanced about imperialism. No nuance for imperialism. None. None. The objective of the United States with these sanctions, with these lies spread in the media, with these attempts to destabilize these countries, the intent of the United States is to overthrow the governments of these nations, overthrow the governments built by these peoples, and institute puppet governments that will allow these nations to be exploited, that will allow their resources to be stolen. That's what the United States is trying to do. It's trying to just mess with people. Oh, Monica's joining. 1 second. Let me take a break so she can say hi. Monica. That was good because I was gonna start cussing. Hi.
I, I'm here. I'm on my phone. I've been watching the whole time.
Good morning. Greetings or good afternoon.
Morning,
I was
afternoon.
I was just talking about Cuba. I was ranting. I was saying that we have to be in solidarity with Cuba, and I was definitely about to start cussing, and you came in and saved me. Yeah.
I'm so glad you're dropping all this knowledge for people to understand what's going on.
Cool, cool. But that's actually a really good. I'm really glad you joined because now we can hop into the main part of the program, the thrust of the program. So we always do on the show a political education topic. And this week we have an interview with a very awesome comrade. Their name is Siihasin. They are DNA organizer here in Tiwa territories. They are a water protector and a land defender and a member of the Hookup, a harm reduction collective, and a community organizer across the United States. They're going to be talking to us about the Stop Line 3 movement. Hey, Siihasin.
Hi, yes, everybody. It's great to be here.
Cool. So we can just jump. Sorry, we were like very last minute editing the show plan. So 1 second. Let me
Thank you
finish
so
doing.
much, CSN, for being here. So excited to learn more about the work of Stop Line 3, the work that's happening on the ground, and also how community in Tiwa territory can be supportive as well.
So we got a series of questions for you, so you can talk all about what's going on with the Stop Line 3 movement. First question is, what actually is Line 3? Why are people mobilizing to stop it, and how does it connect to larger issues around land and water defense and sovereignty in Turtle Island and beyond?
Thank you. Those are great questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just begin by sharing like Yat air. I'm going to introduce myself in my language and share why that's important. So she'e Siihasin nazba yinin share. Torichitni nishle nakai bashishi tototni domestero pachi dashiche nakai dashinala. And as Onia Samo had shared on Diné, but something that I think is really important to share is my clans are of the Bitter Water and the Big Water clans. And so I am a land defender and a water protector, and this is directly tied to like my clanship and my kinship that I have obligations to as a Diné person, to water in particular. And so the fight to stop Line 3 is directly tied to like my existence as a Diné person, but as like a Bitter Water and a Big Water relative. And so just jumping straight in to what Line 3 is. Line 3, which is like a so-called Canadian company for extracting and tar sands oil. It was a pipeline that was built in the 1960s that extends from Edmonton, Alberta to Superior, Wisconsin. And Enbridge is the name of the company that is pushing for the pipeline and has started a replacement project, which extends this pipeline into North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So this is costing about, I would say, $2.9 billion, right? So there's a lot of money. And I wanted to give a little brief like timeline and context about the pipeline and the pipeline construction, because again, like the pipeline has already been built. There is a pipeline that's built and they're creating a replacement pipeline. And so this actually just breaks down that the Wisconsin segment of the pipeline has already been completed. The North Dakota segment has already been completed. The Wisconsin was completed in 2017. North Dakota was completed in 2020. And currently they're extending the pipeline through Minnesota. And so Native people have been on the front lines, putting their bodies on the line to stop the construction, even if it's just one day. And you have, people from all over the United States who are coming through, colonized folks, vulnerable folks, to support indigenous people in their struggle for liberation, but also their struggle to defend their relatives like the water and the wild rice. And so Enbridge is responsible for the largest oil spill in the United States. And it crosses over 200 plus bodies of water as it's going through Minnesota. This threatens native life. There are literally like 20 rice beds, wild rice beds, lakes, wild rice lakes, just 1 mile from the pipeline construction site of Line 3. And so it's really important to understand like the impacts, the environmental impacts that this pipeline is going to have. We've already seen it rupture. There's already been several news sources of that pipeline rupturing as they are currently drilling and trying to construct and put the pipeline in. Several wild rice lakes have been drained without the permission or permits of people in those territories. Line 3 will basically double the flow of the old oil pipeline and carry about 760,000 barrels of tar sands oil per day. And to put this in perspective, this is a total of CO2 daily emissions of 16 to 18 million cars. So this is like just extreme toxic contamination. And according to the state of Minnesota, Line 3 is estimated to cost $287 billion in climate change related damages. It costs about $7 billion to build to build this pipeline, and this contributes greatly to the MMIW G2S, so the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit crisis, due to man camps that come with pipelines. The image on the flyer that is being used for the show is a photo of the Enbridge crew caught scrambling to contain an oil spill at the original Firelight camp near the headwaters of the Mississippi River. And that was just released like a few days ago. We know that the oil spill has been, there's been several oil spills. Enbridge is drilling under the riverbeds across Anishinaabe treaty territory, including Willow River, and the construction has hit an aquifer while they're drilling. This has been reported by several water protectors and camps on the ground. One of the sources that I have been getting information from, like water protectors on the ground and frontliners, is Camp Nemewag, which is run by like the Canoe Collective, as well as several other water protectors. It's important for people to understand that this is violent and irreversible. And it's all in the name of profits. It's all in the name of capitalism. Many water protectors have shared that we are roasting. Like, we are literally in a heat wave, we are roasting, and there has been record-setting drought where many bodies of water are completely dry in Minnesota. And as many folks know, Minnesota is the home of, like, I believe over 10,000 lakes. There's a lot of water out there, and fresh water. Enbridge was given dewatering permits to increase pumping from 540 million gallons from local lakes to 5 billion gallons of lakes. And in some locations, due to extreme drought, some of those permits have been suspended, but not all of them. There have been nearly 600 people that have been arrested fighting against Line 3. This fight has been going on for about 3 years. And it's really, really important for people to understand the level of organization that it takes for this pipeline, for people to fight against this pipeline. And that's something that I've also really appreciated as I've been able to go out to some of the camps, the grassroots camps out in Minnesota. And so right now there are about 6 camps: Nemewag, Red Lake Treaty Camp, Camp McGeezy, Monoman, Shell River, the Welcome Water Protector Center. There are a lot of people on the ground who are doing different campaigns and actions, from soft actions to direct actions. And I think that that's something that's really important for folks to understand, is that there is no sacrifice zones or people, right? We must fight against the United Snakes and other colonial regimes that continue to essentially use systems like imperialism through extraction to contaminate not only our homelands, but our relatives, our resources. There have been calls to the front lines where Indigenous peoples and many other colonized folks are risking arrest, locking down to machineries, because we know that direct action is the only option that works right now. We know that it's the only thing that is stopping the construction of these pipelines. Calls for folks who are willing to get arrested and for material donations is of importance and urgency right now. And it's worth it. Right now in Minnesota, several of the grocery stores and several of the other stores across the state have been monitoring the water protectors and land defenders who are going into town seeking supplies for their camps. and experiencing harassment, as well as police repression and all kinds of other barriers to just defending, water, the wild rice, and the relatives, because we know that these pipelines are directly in cahoots with man camps and the violence against specific people's bodies. And so again, it's worth it to go out and to support in whichever way that you are able to. The damage of extraction is irreversible. An attack on our Mother Earth and the water is a different kind of bullet on our bodies. When the pipeline ruptures and the toxic contamination bleeds into our rivers, we will not be able to clean this. It's irreversible, and the wild rice and many other relatives will die due to capitalism and money. So I'm really urging people to learn more about Line 3 and learn more about the way that Indigenous people and other colonized and vulnerable people are engaging in struggle in those areas that are being directly impacted, but also directly impacted by these pipelines and these violent structures. I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Siihasin. You shared a lot about why Stop Line 3 is happening, why water protectors are on the ground doing this work, as well as it's been going on. Did you say 2 or 3 years? You had mentioned 3 years. It's been going on 3 years, and there's camps on the ground, different camps on the ground. Could you share more about what some of the strategic unity that's happening with camps on the ground, and as well as even political differences?
Yeah, so something that's really important to know is there's about 6 camps, and you have the camps who are calling in different folks from all over the United States to come in and engage in solidarity and struggle with Anishinaabe folks as well as other Indigenous people. And what I really appreciate about the organization of these camps is that there is room for everybody from all across the board and all levels of political development. And so there is spaces for people to learn about the history of the United States and the history of Indigenous people as they struggle for liberation on stolen land. And all of the different camps are engaging in different security protocols and different ways of engaging in struggle. So earlier when I had shared that there was different direct actions or different actions that were ranging from soft actions to direct actions, is that there's people who, are not comfortable, I would say, or have yet to see the importance of literally putting their bodies in the way of these machineries to stop the pipeline construction for that day. But also there are a lot of relatives who are not able to do that. There are people who are on the front lines who are not able to risk arrest like some others are. And I think that that's something that's important too, is that several of these camps are organizing to provide education to people who are very privileged. And so I think that that's really important to share. And one moment. And so with regards to the political organization of these camps, there are different folks who have been in the on the media over the past 3 years who have been sharing about the different strategies that are being used to engage in struggle. And so you have folks who are, again, bringing specifically more awareness, doing petitions and using social media to really educate folks on what's going on currently on the ground. And then you have other folks who are, I would say, very disciplined and more engaged in providing a direct line of resistance for these pipelines to be constructed. And you have varying different folks from different political tendencies, anywhere from folks who don't want to be labeled with any specific tendency to anarchists and communists and socialists and people who are engaging in struggle for liberation. And on top of that, you have people who are very, very vulnerable, who are providing leadership to those who are willing to risk arrest and to help spread out that labor of doing work in a direct action where folks may not be able to and others are able to plug in. And so it's really beautiful to see this organization of people who are coming together to really fight against this extractive industry and capitalism and imperialism. And I think it's really important to use terminologies to describe these companies and industries, because like capitalism and imperialism are the systems that are killing us. And it's not just the systems here, these are the systems that are, and from these like colonial regimes that are being pushed on other parts of the world, such as like in Mexico and Ecuador and Peru and even Cuba. You know, like all of these places are being impacted by like US imperialism, or like the United States, and it's like it's a group of colonizers who are continuing to prey on the resources and make sacrifice zones by the extraction of those resources of indigenous people and vulnerable people.
Thank you so much, Siihasin. And we know like the media, social media is pulling down posts and information about Stop Line 3. Could you post in the chat, and we'll post on Facebook about where pages people can like to follow to stay, because one thing you shared is we should educate ourselves and we should see how we can support. If you could share those in the chat, and we'll make sure to post them on Facebook, because all of this is so important to know, like you were sharing about the toxins and violence that is happening on the land, the water, the air, and the people, and the crops, right? Everything that it's doing, the damaging impacts. And for 3 years, water protectors have been out there. And so it's really critical for us, you know, in solidarity, to be supporting this effort.
I will say that Siihasin actually sent some links for us to share, and we actually dropped them in the chat just now. So folks, please check out stopline3.org, honorearth.org, mn350.org, as well as the social media accounts on Instagram and Facebook that we link to for more information. One thing that folks are asking in the chat, is there a link for donations that can be shared in the comment thread as well, because folks are wanting to donate.
Yeah, so there are several different, there are several different camps. Many of these camps are spread out in region, like sometimes 2 to 4 hours apart. And so they're pretty large camps. And each camp has its own donation link. And so if you go to the websites that are listed inside the chat, then you should be able to find the donation links for each camp. I do want to share that I recommend for folks to definitely support 2 specific camps that are being led by Native women and Two-Spirit folks that are grassroots and led by the people. One of them is based off of out in the reservation of Bandalak Reservation, and then the other is another camp that is led by grassroots folks, and that's Camp Gnu or Camp Namewag, and then the other camp is Camp Magizi. And so I recommend for folks to definitely send support their way, because there's a lot of need for support. You can also add me on Facebook, or we have an event page where it lists out a link to donate to the Southwest Caravan that is going to the front lines, as well as donate monetary donations directly to GNU Collective, and I believe it's like through stopline3.org. But there is a link on the event page, and if anybody is based out of Tiwa territories, we are doing a donation drive this Saturday, and folks are able to bring their donations, in which we will take it straight to the front lines. And I think something that's really important for folks who are not based out of Minnesota, that I would like to share, is that the extraction that is happening in Minnesota is the same companies and the same extraction process that is happening here in Tiwa territories. And it's important for people to see that those two are linked, and that the solidarity between our communities is strong, because again, like it's just different kinds of bullets on our bodies, different kinds of contamination on our resources and our homelands for us, our relatives. And so like extraction there is tied to like fracking here, for example, and the nuclear colonial project that is happening across the so-called state of New Mexico. And I just want to encourage folks to continue to make those connections and bridges from those struggles, because they are one and the same. And we have one enemy, which is the state. And it's important for folks to remember that we are really trying to kick out the United Snakes from our homelands, because if we don't do that, we will not live and our relatives will not live. And this is the state of where we're at right now. Like, it's important for people to understand the urgency of the violence that is being impacted on Mother Earth, but also for Native people, like on our bodies and on our lifeways. The time is now. People are calling for folks to take a stand now, whether it's here, whether it's there, and to be willing to, take the risk of stopping these industries by any means. And so please consider donating to my caravan from the Southwest that's heading up. There are several caravans that are heading up as well. If anybody is interested in risking arrest, please feel free to reach out to me. If anybody has donations, please feel free to reach out to me, or anybody who is on the front lines, honestly. And I just recommend to reach out to Kat McGeezy and the GNU Collective. I think that those are two folks who are really deserving of having more support. They haven't received as much support as some of the other camps. And I think that that's important to say, because they are being led by indigenous people directly engaged in struggle, who do not have like the sources of support compared to other camps.
Thank you so much. And we just also shared the event page and a couple of those links where people can make financial monetary contributions.
So we know whenever African or indigenous people resist the extraction and exploitation of capitalism and imperialism, that we're going to be met with repression. We're going to be met with violence from these states. And so I want to know, what kind of repression are water protectors and land defenders fighting to stop Line 3 experiencing?
So like I had shared a little bit earlier that some of the grocery stores have been targeting water protectors and land defenders who have been going to those stores to get supplies and or just like basic needs. And that's like one piece of it. Another piece was like earlier, like just a few weeks ago, there was a police barricade that was blocking the entrance to one of the camps, which is private property, to several of the water protectors. And so there's like several different like tactics that are being used against water protectors right now, from surveillance to outright blockades, to the escalated charges and days in jail for water protectors who are locking down to machinery. Just a few weeks ago, folks who would lock down to machinery would only be held in jail like overnight. And now we're seeing that water protectors are being held in jail for several days afterwards. And so we're just seeing like an increase of intimidation tactics being used against water protectors, as well as like smear campaigns on the media, and ways that people are criminalizing and even demonizing water protectors who are standing up against these extractive industries. So false information being shared. Another thing too that I think is really important is that this violence is being supported by several big banks, as we saw with like the struggle in Standing Rock against like Wells Fargo, and then like the divestment campaigns to divest from big companies and banks like that. It's the same thing, like we're just having big institutions that are backing Line 3. And so we're also calling for the divestment from these banks and these industries, for folks to pull out their banks, close their accounts. And when they ask you why, tell them because, Line 3, like this bank needs to divest from Line 3 and to move into a credit union if you are able to. This has been very, very effective. I mean, there are several boycott campaigns, like BDS, for example, that have been super successful in pushing forward the liberation of colonized, poor and indigenous and vulnerable people. And so that's one way that people are able to engage in struggle if you are not able to go to the front lines and risk arrest. Another way is, like, again, to send monetary donations or material donations to those of us who are able to make it to the front lines and who are able to risk arrest, and continue to just elevate the platforms of like the GNU Collective and Kat McGeezy and water protectors and land defenders who are sharing what's going on the ground, because we're seeing a lot of censorship by media. I mean, for those of you who don't know, like most of our media sources are controlled by the same people, right? So there's a lot of censorship, and that's the importance behind like shows like like the weekly Pan-African News Show, where we're able to actually talk about these issues and share what's really happening on the ground, because we are seeing the censorship. And so please continue to share, these live videos. Please continue to share posts and pictures, and continue to talk to your relatives about it. Continue to engage and struggle on all fronts, even if it makes folks uncomfortable, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Please, 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 just try it. Just really push yourself to advocate for the struggle, because right now we are fighting for our lives. The house is on fire, and we need to get the heck out of it. We need to get rid of these extractive industries. We need to get rid of these colonial regimes out of our homelands. We need to free our people and our homelands and our relatives from the violence that capitalism and imperialism and regimes like the United States bring. Because we know that indigenous leadership is the solution to climate change. We know that Native people have protected, we make up 5% of the global population, but we protect, I think it's 80% of the biodiversity. We know that we are the solution. And so we're asking people to please just support us and follow us, and really just come through for us. And there are ways that we can bridge our struggles. There are ways that we can, when indigenous people are free, our African relatives will be free. When our African relatives are free, we will be free. And our struggles are interconnected in that way. And it's important for people to understand that it's not, we can't see our struggles as divided. We have to see them as one and the same. And so please, please continue to support us and elevate the platforms that we are trying to use to share what's happening to our homes and to our homelands and to our resources. I prefer to use relatives, because resources is a way to distance yourself from, the relatives in the ground. For indigenous people like this, I fight for the water, I fight for the wild rice, I fight for corn, I fight for my homelands as I would fight for my sibling. And for me, that's how it's important for people to understand, that's what it is about. We're fighting for our family. So please join us.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And for us to join and for people to join and be in solidarity in the struggle, you mentioned that people can divest from banks. So wondering, what banks can we divest from? Material aid. What aid can people bring to the event on this Saturday? What items should people bring? And how can people get involved on the front lines? Always following indigenous leadership.
Thank you so much. So there are several banks that folks can divest from. Some of them are outside of the United States. So if there's any folks who are outside of the United States, but banks out there, please consider divesting from them. But some of them are Bank of Montreal. I'm gonna butcher some of these names. That's fine. The Scotia Bank, RBC, CIBC, Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, MUFG, National Bank of Canada, JP Morgan Chase Bank, I don't know how to say it, Ms. Uho Bank, Dutch Bank, Barclays, BNP Paribas Bank, SMBC Group, Credit Suisse, Credit Agricole, HSBC, and Truist Financial are all of the banks that are backing Line 3. And then when can you?
That's a lot of banks invested in capitalism, and we heard that JP Morgan there, they've been invested in the selling of our people and exploitation of our people. It's all of this capitalism working together to invest in the oppression and killing of indigenous people as well. So definitely divest from any of those banks. If you know people who live in those countries, tell them to divest as well. What material aid, what can people bring for you all, materials people can bring? As you mentioned that some of them are being blockade from grocery stores themselves, right, in that area. What can people bring to the event on Saturday?
Thanks, Monica. So we're asking for material donations of several different things, from bulk food items that are that have a long shelf life, it's like beans, rice, etc. And then we're also calling for material donations of camp supplies, such as I mean, if anybody lives out in Minnesota or areas where there's like large bodies of water, you know that there's a lot of bugs, and so like mosquitoes and ticks, etc. So like folks have been using an insect repellent called, I believe it's Promethean is the most effective. It's a yellow thingy, yellow container. If anybody has capacity to buy those things, as well as like sleeping bags and cots, and even like sub-zero sleeping bags in particular, because I've heard that, you know, the winters are very, very cold out there, and folks have been living in camp throughout the winter time. So any camping supplies, it's almost, you know, it's transitioning into fall here in the next few months. And so camping supplies would be super helpful. And then I am specifically calling for any material aid, such as like bullhorns, batteries, solar batteries, solar powered batteries, anything that is solar powered, because I mean, we're talking about a camp that is outside of electricity and outside of running water. Anything that would really help with like survival gear for being out at camp, power tools, bulk of like nails and screws and other types of materials that might help folks with like building up structures for them to be able to live in. And anything that could be used, honestly, like it's pretty open for folks to really donate. I would really like for folks to donate more like nails and screws and tools, power tools especially. And it would be super helpful for folks to even donate some monetary donations, because again, like we will be traveling by car. And so as much support we can get monetary wise, I'm poor. I'm very poor. And I still make it out to the front lines. We still engage the struggle because it's our obligation. We don't get to plug out of this movement. We don't get to plug out of the violence that's happening to our relatives and family. And so I'm very poor and I don't have like a lot of the financial privileges as a lot of people. And so any support in that regards, or if folks have like a truck that we could borrow, or like a flatbed or something, or a trailer, I don't know. There's a lot of ways that people can plug in and support us. And so all of those things would be helpful. On the event page, I do have a list of specific items that we have asked for that would be really helpful. And so if folks would be down to like just look at that event page and look at that for reference, it'd be great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. There's a lot of feedback in the chat. Just people are feeling what you're saying. People calling out the insanity, the irrationality of building a pipeline as the earth is heating up, as the sea level is rising, as like this place is falling apart thanks to climate change, and they're still building pipelines. They're still destroying the water as a mega drought is bearing down across the entire west half of Turtle Island. So it's just so irrational, and people have to understand that what the work that Siihasin is doing, the work that the Stop Line 3 movement is doing, is for all of us. Like, we all need water to live. All forms of life on this planet need water to live. So these people are risking their lives for us. And so we absolutely have to show up in solidarity. We absolutely have to support indigenous resistance. We have to support water protectors and land defenders, because they're really like one of the few things remaining between us and like total devastation from climate change under capitalism. So is there anything final you'd like to share or tell to our audience?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I think that it's important. There's something that I've heard in media, but also in circles that I'm in, is that there are a lot of folks who are wanting to engage in struggle. And I often hear questions like, how do we begin to like engage in struggle with people who are not already like in struggle with us and already like in our spaces? And I just wanted to encourage people the importance of building relationships and cultivating them and investing in your people wherever they're at, and meeting them where they're at, and helping them get politically developed, and taking that time to build that relationship so that they want to be a part of this movement, or they understand the significance of their participation in these movements. Because again, like we really just have each other as a community, as poor folks, as working class folks. And so please invest in each other. Please, you know, call out, you know, the rhetoric that is being shared in the media, but also learn how to call in your relatives in a way that is helpful and useful in bringing them into these conversations. Because I think that it's important. And now more than ever, it's so important that we're investing in each other and helping each other along to plug into the movement, because we have all been conditioned by a white supremacist, you know, colonial capitalist system. And so a lot of the times, like, ignorance is essentially like bred through these systems. And so it's important for people to understand that the ignorance is intentional and the conditioning is intentional. And so we have to be very intentional about politicizing our people and undoing that conditioning and unlearning the things that we have been taught, because that's how we're going to win. We're going to win by investing in each other and in people power as a collective of people, and as in unity, as in solidarity, and not as individuals. You know, it's really easy for like the system to individualize people, even like folks across Tiwa territories or folks across the United States, to say there's like one leader. But we know that movements, mass movements, are what creates change and what really fights for liberation. And so I just wanted to encourage people to continue to invest in each other, and, you know, take the space that you need whenever you feel drained to like refresh yourself and rejuvenate that energy, but get right back on it. Get right back on helping your relatives and doing that work to politicize them, because nobody else is going to do it. So thank you.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Siihasin, for those words. May they marinate in our soul and our roots, rejuvenate us to be out there in all ways fighting for liberation. And we're always in solidarity with our indigenous relatives. Thank you so much, Siihasin.
Thanks for joining us. That was incredible.
Anytime for y'all. I love y'all so much.
Love you right back, comrade. Thank you so much. So next on the show, we're going to talk about some New Mexico AAPRP chapter updates here in Tiwa territory. And so we are so excited that we are going to be building a shade structure. Thank you, SWAP, for all your support, getting us in contact to somebody to support, as well as young people going to be involved in building a shade structure. More to come, because we're going to call support from community to come out. So more information to come on how you can get involved in developing a shade structure that will also do catch water, right? That we can catch water for the garden as well. Our next garden event is going to be this Sunday at 4 p.m. Come out, 1320 Arno at the Pan-African Community Garden. Going to do making some benches, going to do some painting, just going to be in community, doing some political education. I'm trying to remember the topic. Was it organizing versus mobilizing? It might be. That's the topic. Make sure to come out for some PE as well. Also, in the garden is going to be our first Pan-African Women's Day that we're going to hold there on August 1st. We're so excited. We're going to have some food. We're going to have some poetry. We're going to have a lot of stuff. Make sure to come out. More information to come. You'll be seeing a flyer soon. As always, we got us. So our elder care program is still going. It's been going since the beginning of the pandemic. If you know any African elders in need of resources, let us know. We check in on them once a week. We deliver food to them every Saturday. This is about like community defense and supporting one another. Again, if you know any Africans, elders that are in need of that resource, just reach out to AAPRP. Also, we saw the unapologetic Onyesawu talk about Cuba earlier. So this Saturday, 12 p.m. at El Mesquite on San Pedro, there's a Cuba caravan. There will be political education. There will be speakers there. And it is about ending the blockade, getting more people involved and knowing what's happening in Cuba. You heard a little bit in the beginning from Onyesawu. There's going to be more of that passion there in that space, as we are in solidarity with what's happening in Cuba and wanting to end the blockade that's happening there. Also, Pan-African Women's Day. We've been promoting this for a while. We're so excited. It's going to be on Saturday, July 31st. It's at 10 a.m. Onyesawu is about to drop the link in the chat. You can register it. It's going to be so many different like presentations and just like celebration of us as women. Come through. It's going to be lit. If you miss it, you're going to be like, man, why did I miss that? Make sure you come through. Also, AAPRP, you know, the messaging of organizing, of liberation, of getting involved in organization, of what's happening in our communities. Exactly what like Siihasin shared, we're not going to hear that on local news. We're only going to hear it from other organizers. So AAPRP shout out because there is something happening 4 to 5 days a week. So there is a podcast happening and on Mondays at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And flyers for this information will be showed at the end. Ajamu and Shakira, their shows on Sundays at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. There's the Revolutionary African Women on Saturdays. There's a Forward Ever on Spotify. So there's lots of places that you can get access to real information that's important around for that's impacting colonized folks, and ways and tools for us to continue in the movement, like learning from our ancestors, learning from each other, being in struggle together. So many ways that we can continue to educate ourselves and be out there. So yeah, again, at the end of the show, all of those flyers would be shown, ways for you all to stay involved. So we're on the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We're calling in from Tiwa territory. Join us next week. We're here every Thursday at 12 p.m. Also, Read Hood Communists. I know they just dropped articles out today. I'm not sure how many they dropped, but I know normally they drop at least 4. So I'm excited to see what is out today. So Read Hood Communists. You can go like them on Facebook as well, see what they're out. Join an organization. There's so many things happening that you can get involved in. If there's not an organization out there, you can develop an organization. There's resources out there to do that. But if you are African descent and you are in Tiwa territory, join AAPRP. We need you. We need more Africans involved in this movement. We're building lots of things. We got this community garden that we're building. You know, we want to have a space as well. There's so many things that we can do, but we can only do it together collectively. So we need you. So we're going to say, stay ready for the revolution and pay attention to the slides after. Thank you for joining us for Pan-African Weekly News.
Skybo, turn me up. Another ceilings music.
Antiques in the building.
Antique music. Not born again. Easy.
Man-made. These divisions, they are man-made. We have vice. We have vice, but we cannot see. We got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide black family. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Cuban or Dominican or Panamanian. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Jamaican or American, Haitian or Brazilian. One Africa. All around the world. One Africa. All around the world. Get free. The time has come for us to get free. It's time we break the chains of slavery.